This conference will now be recorded.
She went over to that one. I didn't know that. Yep. And which Richard was it? It was.
Good evening, everybody. Since we are about 5 minutes away from having a chairperson, I will be the chair until you all select one of yourselves as the chairperson. I'll turn it over to that person. Apologize for the slight delay with the technical glitches. Of course, you set all this stuff up a couple times and you try it, and then when the time comes, it doesn't work. So it's the way it goes. But I will call a meeting to order here at 6:10 p.m. Again, appreciate your patience. The first item that we have on the agenda tonight is the nomination and election of the planning board chair and the vice chair. So the chairperson obviously presides over the meetings. We'll have a little bit more interaction with me and with Julie. And the vice chair, really the only role for that person is to serve if the chair is not present at the planning board meeting. So do I hear any nominations for chairperson?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Minnie Truax for chairman.
Second.
Are there any other nominations for chairperson? Or any discussion about chairperson? Do you want to be chairperson?
That'll be fine, but I'll need some guidance.
Absolutely, happy to help.
Okay.
All right. All those in favor of Minnie Truax as chair?
Aye. Can I vote for
Yeah,
myself?
Sure can. I will let you take over now, and you can call for the nomination for vice chair.
Okay, I'll call a nomination for vice chair. Can I make a nomination?
Again?
Paxton Hall. Eight at a time? Yes, ma'am. I'd be honored.
I'll
Thank
second that.
Need to know. I would like to take a vote. Show of hand.
I have it. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you. We need the knowledge. The third on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from December 12th. Move to approve. Need a second? A second. All raise a hand for approval. Okay. Anyone approve? We have anyone that'd like to speak tonight? Public comment? No? We'll move on to the next agenda part. Number 5, the adoption of the planning board rules of procedures. I think everybody's got a copy of it in the
Yeah.
packet.
Madam Chair, if I could just ask Julie Shambaugh to just briefly give you an overview of that, and we'll kind of give you a little intro to each item. And consider it if that's okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Bottom line, it's meant to simplify the language. Sometimes it's a little complicated. Just make it more straightforward, simple and direct. I really think that was the primary purpose of it, just kind of get into the 2020, 2024, and just not to make it overly complicated.
I want to, can I ask a question? Frank, on number, on F, and it says the word "and" other means for effective carrying out plans. Should we have the word "and" in there? F on the rules of procedures for the planning board.
What article? Are you in article?
General Rule 1 and duties, F.
Article 2F, is that where you?
Yes, sir.
Develop and recommend policies or administrative procedures and other means.
And other means, should we put the word "and" in there?
I think that's appropriate because it's replacing the "and" that was crossed out a few words prior to that.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay,
So I would say the "and" would be appropriate there.
Okay.
Obviously, if y'all disagree, we certainly can jump, but I think it's fine.
on my copy, it's in. Yeah, I was saying the "and," I didn't think the "and" should be there, and other means for effective carrying out.
I think it's a list, and then at the end of the list, you write the "and."
Okay.
So it's just listing out, develop and recommend policies ordinances, administrative procedures, and then it's the end of the list, and other, yeah.
Okay.
All right, Madam Chairman?
Yes.
As long as we're on this subject, if we look at H in that same paragraph,
Yes.
my notes say we're removing the word subdivision in front of plats,
Well, we actually,
but it's added back in later.
there's a strike through and underline version in there to show you the changes. And then there's a clean version also in there to make it easy just to read, but.
Right, but this is struck through.
It says subdivision plats, and we're striking out of then subdivision.
But it's underlined. So,
That means we're adding that word in.
oh, I beg your pardon. I beg.
Yeah, I was confused on that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
anything
was-
that's underlined
yeah.
is an addition.
Okay,
Okay.
New text.
It was just to get the
I
phrase.
got it, because it was,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
that's where I was
It
confused.
And that's
looks
why-
like you were simplifying the process.
Yes.
Right. So as we go on down to planning board membership, I think that the limitation of terms, since the Board of Commissioners is not subject to any limitation of terms, I don't believe the planning board should be. Article A, planning board membership 1, appointed members shall serve a maximum of 2 consecutive terms followed by a period of at least 3 years before they may serve on the planning board again. And I think if the Board of Commissioners is willing to accept that rule for themselves, great. But why? I disagree with this strongly.
Yeah, and I think that's certainly your purview and the planning board's purview. We actually contemplated deleting that sentence when we prepared this.
Yeah.
The reason that we did not is because that same language is codified in the Unified Development Ordinance. So we left it in here, but certainly if the planning board would like to, you could make that recommendation to the board to amend the UDO to change that. Obviously, that would be their call. I would recommend, if you want to pursue that, we're happy to pursue that with you. I would recommend keeping that in there for now to be consistent with the UDO until it may be changed.
Well, how will they know if we don't bring it up to them?
Well, if you all, as a group, express that concern, I'll share that concern with them. And we certainly can include a future UDO amendment for your consideration as the planning board to make that change. And then depending on what you all decide, it would go on to the board. Obviously, they have the final decision.
Then I'd like to appeal to my fellow members and see how they feel about that.
We could present it to them and take a vote to present it to them.
Can I have the unpopular opinion, probably? Well, just because I've heard another point of view on this, not necessarily my own, but I see some merit to it, that it is a good idea to have some turnover with the board every couple of years so that you can have differing opinions and different point of view and kind of keep things from becoming like blockaded or stagnant on the board. If you have the same people on the board for 10, 15, 20 years, that'd be kind of like you're losing a little bit by not having other opinions coming in.
Only problem I see with that is a lot of times people don't necessarily want to serve on the planning board. That's been some of the issues in the past, has been getting planning board members.
Mhm.
And so now if you have somebody that can't, that's willing to serve, but can't, and no one else is willing to step up to do it, that's where I think the issue in the past has come up.
Well, and in writing the regulations, is it possible to put in there like, if there are no, like a contingency, if there are no applicants, then it's possible to extend the term.
And I agree that if the town council didn't want to put in, at the same time, which they're running for office there again, that's kind of a little different in opinion and the fact that the people of the town are the ones choosing whether or not they're going to get elected.
Yeah, it's
And
an
the
election.
the real power is with the commissioners.
Mhm.
They're only simply an advisory board.
Mhm.
We have no ability to change anything. But there are no term limits to the commissioners. If they get elected, they can stay in power for 20 years
Mhm.
as a block.
Mhm.
Or not, but anyway.
Well, this would be a total of 6 years, is that correct?
2 3-year terms.
Correct.
So, but anyway, a lot of history can be lost in the.
Yes.
But
Well, and I
that's
see that
my
side of the
opinion.
argument as well. I mean, you do want to follow things through long term. 6 years is a long time though.
But sometimes I'm in a small town.
Microphones?
Yeah, just make sure you speak into the microphone, please. And also for the recording too, it comes through better on the recording with the microphone. So, thank you.
All right. So we move on?
But I have no clue.
I have
I mean, I agree with her.
grammar. Oh,
Yeah, I guess
sorry.
it's really the planning board's pleasure. I mean, if it's something that you would like to address, what we'll do is we'll just schedule that discussion and an ordinance amendment for a future planning board meeting. We put it on your next agenda and you could consider that. I would recommend leaving it in here for now until it's changed because you don't
Until
know
it's
what the board
changed.
will decide.
So I'd like to just question a grammar issue, and that is the name of the Roman numeral 7. Is it conflict of interest, or conflicts plural? I think it is meant to be conflict of interest.
What page are we on here?
Well, we're on page 5.
You looking at the markup version or the clean version?
The markup,
I think it starts at the bottom of page 4.
or even, yes, the name of that number 7 is conflict of interest, but in other sections, it's referred to as conflicts of interest. Just a grammar
Yeah.
issue.
An A.
We need to strike the S.
Right, the S on conflict, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
That's in 7C. 7C, 7A and 7C. There's an S in there. And yeah, 7A and 7C.
And 8A and C. Also Roman numeral 8A and C.
I'm sorry, yes, 8A and C. I apologize.
Yeah.
That's an easy fix through Word.
Yeah. The other one, okay, there's one more in section Roman numeral 8 voting, C. Strike that S again. And I did have one question. On page 2, planning board officers, duties of the chair. I wonder if on number 3, entertain and answer questions of rules and or procedures. My question is, or delegate, for example, to Julie or Frank or someone who might have a greater knowledge of
Right.
Issues. Just a question, if that's appropriate. I could,
Well, I think that,
Live without it.
duty of the chair should have the opportunity for the town manager to inclusive of all the meeting. So we could add that in there.
I think that would be fine if that's the board's pleasure.
What do you think?
Entertain, answer, or delegate.
if that's appropriate, because I certainly don't know the answer to every single question that may pop up,
Well,
but somebody will.
well, the knowledge that we need, with Mr. King being not here anymore, and he had a lot of knowledge, so Frank can relay that to us and help assist us on that matter.
That's all I had, Madam Chair.
Okay. We were on 5. All right, ordinance of amendments of chapter 8.
If the planning board's comfortable with
Oh, yeah,
that,
we
is
can
there a
vote.
motion and vote on that.
Does everyone like to take a vote on the few changes that have been made in the rules of procedures for the planning board? Like, raise your hands if they're okay.
Well, so move with the additions. If
With
it
the
please the board.
corrections.
Yeah.
Do you want to list
The
them?
changes that we noted were in 4B3, it would read entertain, answer, or delegate questions of rules and or procedure. And then in section 8A and 8C, the removal of the letter S from the word conflict.
Yes.
Those would be the official changes that the motion should reflect if you all are comfortable. And then we will bring forward an ordinance amendment for your formal consideration about the term limit issue at your next meeting.
Yes, sir. That's my motion.
You can motion to accept the changes by the raise of hand.
Do we need a second?
Yeah, we
Oh, I
do.
need a second.
Second.
Yep.
Okay. Y'all did a lot of work before we came in here
Oh, yeah.
on these changes,
Oh, yeah.
and thank you for that. So we need to move to our next area of business, the ordinance of amendments of chapter 8. I think everyone's got a copy of that.
Oh, yeah.
And procedures of the Unified Development Ordinance to clarify the development of lots of recorded as of July 15th, 1974. Would you like to give us some
Sure.
information on that, Frank?
There's a copy of the ordinance in your packet. It's in underline and strike through. It's actually a pretty simple ordinance. Let me pull something up on the screen to help you. You can sort of see the fringe right here. And I pull up the GIS. Let me do that. I want to make sure you have a full. So there's a current provision in the UDO, and this is pretty common in a lot of communities. It essentially says if you have a vacant lot that was platted, that existed as of July 15th of 1974, that if it does not meet the minimum lot size requirements, the owner or the developer is able to construct something on that property, provided they meet all of the other requirements in the UDO, the setbacks being the main issue. In our case, setbacks are pretty small, so it's fairly easy to meet the setbacks in Cape Carteret. The language that we have in here now is pretty simple and pretty straightforward, with one exception. If you look at letter B that we've indicated in strike through, it has some language about confirming whether or not the owner of that lot ever owned one of the adjacent lots next to it at some point in the past. And I don't know the history on that, perhaps Paxton may.
Yeah.
My understanding was that there was a period in time where maybe those lots were larger and then they were cut up and then people sold them. Regardless of what the history is on that, at my level, from our perspective, I don't particularly care. And I don't mean that in a negative way, because I'm focused on moving the town forward and administering things hopefully as easily and as helpful as we can. Essentially, what letter B requires is the person to go through a title search to basically confirm the ownership of the adjacent parcels, to see whether or not they're allowed to use the provision in letter A that's in here that I think is pretty straightforward. So what we're recommending is simply striking that requirement and essentially saying if the lot existed on January 1st of 2024, if you can't meet the minimum lot size requirements, but you can meet the setbacks and all the other requirements, you're good to go. You can get a permit to put a house on that lot. It affects residential districts, and the main area that is affected is kind of in the Bayshore Park area. And so if you see,
Can I ask a question on that? All right, so like, I'm gonna use a house I used to own, 113 Boatsound Drive. That was actually at one time, that was, it was, it's on the east side. Yeah. 113, yeah. Anyway, it was 3 lots and a house set on the 3 lots. And so let me understand this. So the house straddled 2 of the lots, and then there was a 3rd lot that was bought at the time with the house. So in other words, what you're saying is if somebody wanted to sell that lot or build something else on that lot, they couldn't do it, even though as of 74, when it was platted, it was 3 lots and then turned into, am I correct with that?
I think I know what you're asking. So the way that this ordinance amendment is written for your consideration tonight, you can't go back in time or you can't subdivide the property again. If the lot existed on January 1st of this year, which basically all of these did, you could build on it, but you couldn't go back to this lot, for example, and divide it into 2. That's not what this allows. That's not what's allowed currently, and that's not what we're proposing.
Okay.
So does that answer your question?
I think so. So in other words, even though it was platted as 3 lots originally, because it was owned by the same person, it now can't ever be subdivided back into those 3 lots.
The only way that it could be subdivided is if it met the minimum lot size requirements. Practically speaking,
It probably couldn't because they were 50-foot lots.
But if you had a piece of property that was big enough to meet the minimum lot size requirements, like I think in the R10 district, the minimum lot size is 15,000 square feet.
Yeah,
So
which is,
there may be something else.
Yeah.
Probably not.
yeah.
So just for everybody's education, so these lots, the skinnier lots that you see here, they're generally 50 by 200. So that's a 10,000 square foot lot.
Excuse me, only on the west side of
Yeah,
Boat
the other side there.
On the east side, they're 150.
50 feet, yeah.
100, you're correct, I apologize. So, on the east side, on the west side of Boattown Drive, 50 by 200.
Yes.
On the east side, 50 by 150.
Yes, sir.
The ones on the west side of Boattown Drive, that comes out to 10,000 square feet. On the other side of Boattown Drive, 7,500 square feet, which I would submit to you, it's a small lot by Cape Carteret standards, but it's still there are a lot of communities that have minimum lot sizes of 5,000 square feet, for example. So it's not unheard of or unreasonable, I don't think. One thing that I want you all to understand is that if you look at Bayshore Park, the green is R10, the yellow is R30. And so you have a handful of these lots on the west side of Boattown Drive that don't meet the minimum lot size requirements. When you read this section, you could develop them as long as you meet the setback and so forth. The problem is there's a requirement in the R30 zone that says the lot has to be 70 feet wide. So some of those lots are only 50 feet wide. We would have to make another amendment, which might get a little more complicated and open up some more cans of worms. And you may or may not want to do that because R30 is our largest zoning district, all in yellow there. So if that's something that you all want to consider changing to accommodate the smaller lots, basically on this strip of Boattown Drive, it's probably a handful of them. We can talk about that some more, but if you just go ahead and remove that provision, it affects everybody in yellow. So
Because it looks like most of them lots are 50 foot on that side.
All of them.
on
Yeah,
the-
they are.
on the east side,
So change the zoning on them where people can utilize that 50 by, what'd you say, 200 foot?
yeah, which that's not an issue in the R10 zone because we don't have that 70-foot minimum lot requirement. So everybody in the light green color would be helped by this change here tonight. It's just there's a handful of people on the west side of Oaktown
Yeah.
Drive that still won't help on those small lots. But really what it does is it just makes it easier and simpler, and as you all, I'm sure know, there are already plenty of 50-foot wide lots out there.
There's a lot of
that have
vacant
homes
ones.
on them. It's a nice community, so we don't see any drawback to it, and we're just trying to make it easier for people.
Well, I have a question. Why not just change that strip of yellow, which is part of the Bay Shore subdivision, always has been, was recorded at the same time?
Yeah.
Why not just change that to the Bay Shore zone?
I think if that's an idea y'all want to pursue, we could do that. It's going to get a little more complicated because you have to notify all those property owners, all the adjacent property owners. There may be other issues that arise from some of those property owners. They may or may not like that, but that would be one way to solve it.
I did,
Isn't there a restriction that you can only put houses on the west side?
yes, or, yes.
Well, but no, because there's some other ones that's been put on the west side that's not just houses. Pretty
Either
sure.
modular or stick built. I think that's a
A
requirement.
a modular's a house.
Yeah, you can't put mobile homes on that side.
You
Right.
can put
Correct.
mobile
You can
homes
put a
on that side.
modular.
Yes, sir.
Well,
But still,
sometimes
you
it's
got a
just
lot of
sticker
these-
difference.
These homes now coming
But we
narrow
won't-
along
we won't
cottages.
go there.
Which lot on,
No, I'm just saying sometimes it's just a sticker difference between a modular and a mobile home.
Oh.
It just, they,
Because it's one modular over there that just got be put in on a narrow lot.
yes, it did.
Just recently,
Yeah.
kind of like near Park Avenue.
Because they made the cottages now
Yeah.
modular.
Yeah, I mean, so the lots, even if it's 50-foot wide lot, the side setbacks are 10 feet. So you have a 30-foot wide house, that's a pretty decent sized
Yeah.
house.
And it's long.
I'm
So-
shocked to hear that 70-foot wide lot minimum. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, we have that in every zoning district except for R10 and R10M.
Whoa. I had no idea.
From my experience, I think it has probably little practical value, but it's a fairly common provision in other municipal ordinances. So from my standpoint, I don't think there's much harm in removing that provision, but you'd want to see what other people think about that issue. That gets a little more complicated.
Mhm.
What we're talking about here tonight is pretty simple and
Yes.
straightforward, I think.
But I would sure love to see that on the list to do. Consider. Wow.
I mean, I know that we like having space between the houses.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing that drew us to the Star Hill neighborhood was that the houses aren't cramped on top of each other.
Right.
So there is some value. I mean, I think maybe some people value it more than others, but there are some neighborhoods where you can barely fit between the houses.
A lot of Bay Shores weekenders.
Yeah.
Now when Niners coming down, and then you got a 50-foot lot and they could put a cottage on it and have a nice vacation home. Fill the subdivision up instead of having vacant lots everywhere.
Yeah, the vacant lot issues, not bringing
I
in revenue
kinda-
like we should be getting if we had a home on it. So we're losing revenue.
And if that's home on it brings more revenue into the town.
Yes.
Yeah, the 70-foot minimum lot width, just so you understand what that means. So you still have to meet the front setback, which in R30 is 40 feet. You still got to meet the rear setback, which in R30 is 40 feet. And you still have to meet the side setbacks, which are 10 feet. So you could theoretically have the house right up to 10 feet from the property line.
Right.
That 70-foot is just, you can't, if it's like a pie-shaped lot, even if you meet the setbacks, you've got to be at a point where it's 70-foot wide. So that's why I think it's probably doesn't have tremendous practical value, but that's ultimately your judgment and the Board of Commissioners' judgment to make. So
Yeah, as long as you have the setbacks in place.
I think that's the
Yeah.
most important
Yeah.
feature. So.
Yeah, the setbacks definitely help.
Because it was one lot on Easy Street that's got a little house on it was for sale. And I called about it, but the lot ain't big enough. If you tear it down, you can't build back on it. The one that's on telephone poles down there on the right.
All the way down toward the water, kind of back up to the canal. Yeah, and I think I might remember that house because it had a good price on it, I think.
Yeah.
We had a fair amount of calls about it. And that's a perfect example of how these things get confusing, right? We're
Mhm.
trying to make it simpler so that we give people the correct information. And I think it's in the town's best interest to have the older house that maybe doesn't look as nice torn down and a nice new house there and makes the neighborhood look better.
Yeah, because you got several down Easy Street that won't be long, they'll be on top of the ground.
So what was the impediment to tear down and rebuild at that one?
The lot size wouldn't allow. So a guy's son bought it in the neighborhood and redid it, kept it as it is.
I see,
Because I was interested in buying it, tearing it down and building a house like I built on Easy Street,
right,
but it wasn't workable.
uh-huh.
And it's on the canal too, so what a waste, you know?
What size lot was it?
I think it was a 50 foot, it wasn't big.
50 foot.
I think it's 50 foot by 150. It was, it's an old fish camp from way back in the days, you know?
Right.
Where our public works guy Earl lived?
I don't know. It probably, you can't, I'd be lucky to be able to walk under it and not hit my head.
Yeah, because it's on piling.
It's on telephone poles.
Yeah.
It was a fish camp back in the day.
Yeah.
It'd have been nice to be able to buy it, tear it down and put a new structure there.
Check it out.
That's why I say them 50-foot lots. Cut them loose at the meet the setbacks and all. The way it is nowadays, everybody's looking to downsize anyhow to cottages.
Yes.
I mean, we're getting ready to do a bunch of them in Swansboro. And we're building at Ward's Farm, this small cottages.
They're beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It just costs so much to build in there for no more square footage than you got, but I just started 2 in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, we want to do whatever we can to improve the appearance of the neighborhood.
Yeah,
the
'cause
quality of
times
housing
is-
stock.
Times is changing. I mean, Bay Shore was blue collar worker type area that people come down and fished and they had lean-tos there and all, and it's changed over the years. And there's still a lot of 50-foot lots in there.
Are the setbacks consistent across the zones? Are there?
The side yard setbacks are 10 feet everywhere except R10M. So they're consistent across all of our residential zones. The front yard setbacks, some of them are 35 and some of them are 40. I'm not sure of why that distinction. The rear yard setbacks vary 10, 25, 30, 40. One of the things that you may hear from me at some point in the future, I know some of you have heard me talk about a desire to just simplify the UDO and try to consolidate things and make it easier to read and honestly a thinner document that really just hits on the high points. I want to take a real critical look at maybe even collapsing the number of residential zones. Instead of having 4 or 5 residential zones, maybe we should only have 1 or 2. And the rub is going to come in with how you match up all the setbacks and stuff. So,
Oh, yeah.
but so they're mostly consistent. The rear yards get a little variable. So
I think we should open the door for the 50-foot
I
lots.
think so too.
What do y'all think?
Yeah. I do, definitely.
Make a
That's what
proposal
they're-
to open the doors for 50 lots.
yeah, so we have the ordinance prepared for you. So if you're comfortable with the language, you could just make a motion to recommend that the Board of Commissioners consider the ordinance, adopt the ordinance.
We need to have a first vote, right? Anybody, a motion to accept it?
Yeah, I'd say a motion to accept it.
Okay, second?
I'll second it.
Raise a hand to accept 50-foot.
Okay.
It has passed.
Well, thank you. We will schedule the public hearing for the Board of Commissioners next meeting on March 11th.
I think that's-
Minnie, excuse me. Were you saying about the 50 feet or about this ordinance?
This ordinance.
Okay, okay. So that's 2 different things.
Okay. I want to ask a question about the height.
Yeah, well, let me just say this. There are some items that will bring you where it'll just be a discussion, and it'll be a little more free form, so to speak, and you probably need to be careful about what the actual language of the motion is. We try to make it as easy as possible for you, so whenever we bring you an ordinance like this, if you're comfortable with the language that's in there, you can simply just make a motion to recommend adoption of that ordinance
Okay.
to try to make it easy.
And to Frank's point, a lot of times We bring something for discussion,
Mhm.
and topping the agenda with a discussion.
Okay.
So it's kind of a, it's not ready to go forward.
Gotcha, thank you.
Thank you for guidance on that.
So we will schedule it for the March 11th Board of Commissioners meeting, and I think, Madam Chair, you had a question about 50 foot, the building height, I think you were about to ask.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask another question about the height.
I think it's 40 foot.
I know. I have always heard, and I don't know if it's rumor or law or rule, that you couldn't build it because of the because of the base on height. Because we had a home in Bay Shore that went over the height
It's like,
back in the day.
the MOI's 40 foot. I think it's 40 foot over here too.
Yeah, so it varies a little bit, but in the R10 zone in Bay Shore, it's 40 foot.
I had a question about that because it's 55 in B20.
55.
Is it?
B20?
That's the only location, and I always assumed it was maybe to allow a hotel or something, my guess.
Right.
But our for residential districts, R13 is 35. All of the other residential districts are 40. And Emerald Isle is 40 also,
Yeah.
unless they've changed it lately.
Does it have something to do with the fire department's ability for their equipment to put a fire out on the homes?
I think that was at one time.
At one time.
I'm sure
And
that,
the Bogue Airfield too.
yeah, I'm sure that was
Well, I
a
know both
consideration.
were there where the old Hardee's used to be,
Mhm.
with old drawbridge. They were gonna build some kind of food place there, club, I can't think of the name, Margaritaville.
Uh-huh.
And they were gonna be over 40 foot and nobody wanted it because it was over 40 because of the airstrip. So they ended up voting against it. And it's still old Hardee's there, which I thought it'd been nice to have a Margaritaville there. But it would interfere with the air traffic coming in and out.
Oh, wow.
I think that's what it was, Margaritaville.
Do y'all have regulations on your airstrip at Star Hill
Sure.
on heights of homes?
Oh, no. That,
So there's a couple of nuances to the building height limits. One is that it's measured to the peak of the roof. Whereas, for example, in Emerald Isle, it's an average of the peak and the eaves, and different communities may do it different ways. But in our case, it's to the peak of the roof. There's also consideration if it's in a flood zone, you measure it from the freeboard elevation to the peak of the roof. So you could wind up with a home that's 45 feet or 48 or whatever. It depends on site-specific flood elevations there. So just so y'all are aware.
Y'all do a 2 foot freeboard.
Correct.
So that means kind of cutting down on the house with the 2 foot freeboard because you got more underneath and shorten it up on top. 9 foot first floor, 8 on the second.
so are we still on, discussing, number, 6? Or have we moved on to?
I think we approved 6, correct?
Correct.
Is there another one you'd like to discuss to us?
The number 7 is the ordinance amending the UDO to establish a town center zoning district.
That's my exact question, which?
So this is kind of a big deal. So I want to make sure that I give you guys a good overview of this, and certainly want to hear your questions, concerns. This is probably going to be the biggest amendment to the UDO the town has made in quite some time. The town's land use plan calls for the area basically in the triangle, so to speak, which is currently zoned R30, B20, and R20, R30, and B20 in this area. The town's land use plan calls for this area to be developed with sort of a town center concept, mixed-use zoning district concept. And so the kind of development that's promoted in the land use plan are these sort of village-style homes, smaller cottage types that you were talking about, Ted. And then also mixed-use buildings where maybe you've got a shop on the ground floor and some residential units above. So that's the concept that was included in the land use plan and ultimately approved by the planning board and the board of commissioners. The ordinance amendment that you have for your consideration tonight, we believe would implement that vision that's included in there. We went to very deliberate efforts to structure the proposed town center zoning district to be inclusive, to not exclude any of the current uses that are permitted in those zoning districts, the B20, the R20, the R30. We wanted it to not penalize anyone if the properties were rezoned. We wanted to promote the vision that I just showed you from the land use plan. We are trying to create a special place in Cape Carteret, something different, something that hopefully will include public gathering spaces, something that will include quality new development, other housing options available to people in Cape Carteret, and really just a neat place to either live or visit or go to a restaurant or what have you, enjoy your life. And then quite frankly, it is written intentionally to be lucrative for the landowners in that area. And I say that because I know sometimes people may frown upon that, but in my experience, that's the way you accomplish quality development and good things in a community, is you create the incentive for the type of development that you want. So the ordinance amendment for your consideration is really intended to incentivize the pictures that I showed you on the screen of the cottage style, village style homes, the mixed use development. The way this ordinance amendment is written, it allows everything that's currently allowed in those zones. Again, don't want to hurt anybody, but it's written in such a way that there's a lot of incentive to develop in that way. And so some of the examples that we've noted that you might be familiar with on a large scale, there's the Mayfair development off of Military Cutoff Road in Wilmington. There's the Market Common development down near the Myrtle Beach Airport. And I realize some people will say, we don't want to be Myrtle Beach, or we don't want to be Wilmington, or those are too big places. Totally understand that, appreciate that. I'm just using those as an example of the kind of environments that we're trying to create. On a really small scale, it's the Village West area in Emerald Isle, which has individual condominium units and then has a handful of businesses on the ground floor. So on a very small scale, that's the kind of thing that we're trying to incentivize here. And I say the word incentivize because ultimately it's up to the landowners. It is their land. That's the reason we all own land, so that we can decide what to do with our land. And so therefore, this is intentionally written to incentivize what the townspeople have said they wanted with the town center mixed use type zoning district. The way that this is laid out, I hope that it's a relatively simple, easy read for everybody. Again, it allows all of the current zoning uses. It adds new uses. It specifically adds the mixed use mixture of residential and commercial in the same building or the same project or the same parcel. It allows multifamily residential units. It sets limits on the density that you can have there. So if it's a multifamily residential building, you could go up to 8 units per acre. If it's the village cottage style single family homes, you can go up to 6 units per acre, the way that this is written. And you all may talk about that and say, gosh, that's too much, or that's not enough. And that's completely open for your discussion and the Board of Commissioners discussion. I've selected the 8 and the 6 figure because obviously we are all on-site wastewater treatment septic systems in this area for the most part. I think there is a reasonable chance the soils could accommodate that intensity of development. There would be some locations where they can't, depending on the soil characteristics. So the 8 and the 6 are T numbers. And so the trick in all of this is making sure that it's suitable for the land that you have, making sure that you allow the type of development where honestly someone can make money off of it, so that we can create the incentive so people will do these things. And then the community's benefit are the nice, cool places to hang out or to live in the town center, hopefully. Couple of other key points. I won't bore you with all of the key provisions in here. Some of the things that I think are probably maybe a little more interesting. It specifically sets the setbacks so that buildings are close to the street. So it has a minimum setback of 5 feet. So you can't be any closer to the street than 5 feet. But it also has a maximum setback. You can't be any further back than 10 feet because we're trying to create the buildings closer to the street. And again, create that town center, villagey type feel. So that's a key consideration. The side and the rear yard setbacks, they're a minimum of 5 feet also. There is an exception adjacent to Arden Oaks. That's the only residential subdivision adjacent to this entire proposed zoning district. For all development, you have to maintain at least 25% as vegetated area. That doesn't mean natural area. That doesn't mean you can't cut down trees. It just means that you have to have 25% of the site green. And that could be natural vegetation. That could be nice landscaping. That could be new trees. Could also be your wastewater drain field. Could also be your stormwater features. But 25% of the site to keep it somewhat green in there. You have to meet all of the applicable stormwater requirements, certainly all of the septic system requirements, any camera requirements that may come into play. There is a provision that says all of the parking areas are required to be in the rear or on the side of the structure. Again, trying to push the development up closer to the street. It does require curb and gutter and sidewalks in these neighborhoods. It does have a provision that if it's a collector street, more significant street, it has to be dedicated as a public street. If it's just residential streets, they can be private streets, obviously at the owner's, developer's discretion there. All of the same sign regulations that we currently have, with one exception, we currently require freestanding signs to be 20 feet from the right of way. And obviously, if we want the houses or the buildings closest up to the street, we've limited that to the same 5 feet that we talked about a little bit earlier. I think those are kind of the key things. I certainly didn't hit every single point in here. I think one thing to understand is that if someone chose to develop kind of a typical commercial shopping center, let's say they wanted to build Carteret Crossing on one of these parcels or the next Carteret Crossing, they could do that the way this is written, and they would be subject to the requirements for that business zoning district. Likewise, if you want to go build a single family home in the middle of the residential parcel, you can do that. And you'd be subject to the traditional single family residential development
May I
requirements.
stop you for a minute?
Sure.
Why have you set the 5 feet? What if, I mean, you're going to limit parking to 5 feet, won't you?
So the parking is required to be in the back or on the side. And so the 5-foot setback is on the front because basically you're trying to create an environment where the buildings are close to the street.
Okay, so we got we'll have a
Kinda like that.
sidewalk and then like trees along that sidewalk. And you can get all that within 5 feet?
Well, the sidewalk and the trees might be in the right of way, because typically the right of way is 60 feet. The actual width of the street is 28 feet by the time you have the curb and gutter. So you'll typically have anywhere from 10 to 15 feet of space there on the right of way.
Okay.
Where your sidewalk would go and any street trees or really anything else that people might want to put out there. So
From the center of the road, right?
So the right of way is 60 feet. So basically, if the street's in the middle of the right of way, you'd have 14 feet either side of that. You'd have your curb and gutter. And so 15 minus 14 gets you down to 16. By the time you get the curb and gutter in, you'll probably have about 10 feet or so of area there where your sidewalk would be. Maybe some nice street lights, maybe some nice trees. I guess it really depends on what style someone is trying for. So, and we can talk about that if that's something you think should be different. But the intent, again, was to put the houses or the mixed-use buildings up close to the street,
Right.
Within 5 feet. And so the other thing I want to just make sure that I share with everybody. So this is the proposed boundaries of the zoning district. And it's essentially everything bounded by 5824 and Taylor Notion and south of Arden Oaks. And there's a Forest Service parcel right here. This is a vacant parcel, and then Mac Daddy's and the driving range is kind of down in this area here. So if you all make a favorable recommendation, if the Board of Commissioners ultimately adopts this, the next step would be to rezone the parcels that you see within the dark blue line to the town center zoning district. I personally believe that's a no-brainer for the landowner because, again, this doesn't take any of your current development options or rights away from you. It simply expands the opportunities that are available to you. But we would go through a process. We would have to notify all the property owners, notify all the adjacent property owners, go through that process. And if someone objected, I'm sure the Board of Commissioners or you all would consider that and make a judgment. But that would be the next step. The first step is to create the zoning district, kind of create the framework for that. So.
I have a question, Frank. In that picture, Arden Oaks is not included, but in this picture, where it says the orange is future medium density, it is included all the way up to the tip of the triangle, including some of like the northeast side of Taylor Notion.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm trying to see if I can.
Oh, yeah, it's sort of, and it's 5 foot between them, which makes sense.
And south of 24 as well.
Mhm.
Yep.
And you know,
south
they
of
be-
24.
Many.
Mhm.
So what Laura is asking is, she's referring to this map that's included in the town's land use plan. And this is not as specific as that proposed zoning map that I showed you. This is intended to be more vague. And what the orange represents on there is more of a general area where we might allow multifamily housing. Doesn't mean we have to, but it's a little bit broader. It essentially opens up the possibility of the south side of 24, opens up some of the Taylor Notion Road area. So that's kind of a general. And as a general plan, more of an expression of the concepts and the vision. What the community said is, hey, we think it might be okay to put multifamily house areas. What we are proposing to rezone is just the areas here that are either undeveloped for the most part or are already developed with commercial properties and schools in there, obviously. We don't, at my level, we don't want to extend the town center zoning district to any of the yellow areas, really, or any other zoning districts. There may be a potential if the planning board and the Board of Commissioners would like to do it. You know, you might consider some selective expansion of that town center zone, maybe on the south side of 24, maybe on Taylor Notion Road if it made sense. I don't think we want to bring it into any of the single family residential zones though that are developed.
Is it Hunter Drive?
100 Brown Drive. Yeah, that's
It's right
It's kinda-
outside.
up in this area right here. And so that's not a part of this also, because it's developed as single family residential. If there's a tremendous demand for expanding it to some of these areas, I'm sure that you all and the Board of Commissioners would consider it, but I can't see that forthcoming.
May I ask why the town hasn't tried to take that in and claim the road and on the Powell
Because it's a
bill? And
private road,
they're all private,
Yeah.
yes.
Hunter Brown?
Yeah.
Doesn't it go all the way over to 58?
No,
I don't even think it's even platted.
It's
There
not.
may be easements, I'm not sure, but, yeah.
It was a
there's
farm at one
nothing
time.
there.
And bits and pieces are,
yes, family here and family there, and yeah.
So I guess, still on the same question. I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, yeah.
So in this proposal, it says that we're proposing to adopt what's in this comprehensive plan that's attached, but that graphic is in there. And
Yeah, this one was.
yeah,
Yeah.
this one.
And this is what should be in it.
Yeah,
Come
so
back to it.
what if we just have like concerns with just this graphic, but not the other one that it seems like we're proposing to adopt both though, because they're both included in the package.
Yeah, so let me try to answer it this way. This one's already been adopted.
Yes.
Okay.
This is official, recommended by the planning board, adopted by the Board of Commissioners, sent to the North Carolina Division of Coastal Management. But you have to understand the difference between the land use plan and the actual ordinances. So the land use plan is not intended to be so specific and so detailed. It's really intended to be more of a general expression of what the community would like to see. That vision, those concepts, the ordinances actually implement the vision and concepts. And so what we're proposing is we don't necessarily want to implement town center up here in, say, Arden Oaks or Hunter Brown Drive. We only want to do it in the areas basically bounded by the dark line. But for example, if you go back to this, keep in mind, this is not town center. This map's not showing town center. This is showing the areas where medium density might be allowed in the future. So, for example, I don't think it would make sense. Well, I'll give you a real world example. So the townhouses up here on Taylor and Ocean Road, those were rezoned. That parcel was rezoned, I don't know, maybe a year ago or so, a little more, for townhouses at a very low density, 5.5 per acre. And so I think it'd be acceptable for the townhouses to go there. But at least from my perspective, I wouldn't want to make that town center, for example. And I wouldn't want to drop town center up in Hunter Brown Drive because you've got a lot of single family homes up there. However, if there's a large enough parcel, it might make sense to put some townhouses in there if everything was right about it, right? You still have to go through the rezoning process, all the same kinds of process that I just described. Does that help?
That's medium density housing. And the town center is both housing and commercial. So it goes beyond just housing.
So they're really two different things.
One was already adopted, one isn't adopted yet.
There's that difference, but they're actually, those maps are depicting two different concepts. They're a little similar, but one is saying this is where we might have one family housing, the other saying this is where we think the town center.
And has the landowners
Might want to consider
looked at, like, do they want it?
revising that so that you don't have townhouses right at the entrance to the golf course. That's like at the entrance. It's really nice and open and beautiful right now, but I mean, might be
The
something to
golf course,
consider,
well, the golf course doesn't own that property,
Yeah.
and the
right?
golf course ownership is supportive of that effort.
Okay, to have it right there at the
Right.
front. Okay.
Right.
There's already townhouses right
Well,
right near
it's
it.
kind of down the way though. You don't see
Yeah.
them at all when you drive into the golf course. They're way
Depends
down
on which way you turn.
towards the other end of.
Right.
Yeah, what I will say is, I mean, if you and the planning board feel strongly about that issue, I mean, there is a process where you can go through and the town can amend the land use plan. It's even more cumbersome than what we normally do for the ordinances, but it can be done. I mean, if that's something that you as a planning board felt like needed to be adjusted, we can talk about that. The Board of Commissioners can certainly make that change. It then has to go back to coastal management, so it just takes a while, but it can be done.
Has any of the landowners stated or said anything about wanting it zoned this way? Have they embraced it? They've been happy with being able to open up their land to obviously be able to develop it more?
All of the landowners
Okay.
have been consulted. Thank you for
Yes.
your concern. All of the landowners have expressed support and no objection to this.
Okay, that was my question.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was really a key concern of the Board of Commissioners. And so we've had 2 group meetings with all of the main landowners and then have had lots of individual conversations with everybody too. And actually some of those comments and suggestions have been incorporated in here. I presented this originally as a draft back in August. The board said, yeah, generally it looks good. We got feedback from the property owners and made a few changes in here that I think are good changes based on that.
Well, consistent with the articles that we have just ratified as to our rules of procedure, Madam Chairman, I would like to have some questions answered on this ordinance, but I'd like to be recused from voting on this issue.
Okay.
Due to the procedures we've adopted, which specifically prohibit me from voting on such. But I did have a couple of questions, if I may.
Yes.
Please.
So on number, the key provisions, this would be on the second page,
What section are you on?
on the ordinance, the ordinance
Okay.
that we're considering. And they're not, the pages aren't numbered, but it would be the second page. And it says the maximum building height for mixed-use multifamily residential village single.
You're looking at the memorandum.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Let me
yes.
let me get back to the right.
Yes, sorry.
That's
Well,
all right.
it's in our agenda, the next
Okay.
item.
I'm with you.
Yeah, okay. So it says all traditional commercial and residential development would be subject to the current building height requirements. So for B20, it is 55 feet. For R20, it's 40, and R30, 40. So which would be, or would all of these be
Yeah.
the
So
height?
so
That was my question.
yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and this is kind of an important part that I want everybody to understand. So you could see that the properties are already zoned B20, R20, and R30. And so let's just say, for example, a landowner wanted to develop a hotel there. They could develop that hotel under the town center zoning standards that are included in here. And they'd get to take advantage of all of the other features, the reduced setbacks, all of the design features where we've tried to make it more flexible. For example, they may want to do a project that has a hotel and some condos or apartments in it or something like that. So it's really the owner or the developer's choice. If they decide to go with the town center standards, they're going to be limited to 40 feet for that hotel.
Oh,
And,
really?
and that may make sense. Well, let me finish because there's another piece to it.
Okay.
If they say we want to go with town center, they're going to be limited to 40 feet, which is the standard for the building height for town center. They have the choice though. If they say, no, we want to be subject to the B20 zoning district and we want to take advantage of the 55 feet, that's their choice, but they're going to be subject to all of the current zoning requirements for the B20 district. And so quite frankly, so in that particular case, the owner or the developer is going to have to decide, and it really depends on what they want to accomplish. Is it more important to me to get the extra 15 feet of height for my hotel? Or is it more important to me to have these more flexible, more lucrative zoning requirements that are available in town center? And that's going to be a very personal decision for everybody in that situation. I will tell you that very specifically, directly, I tried to write this draft ordinance so that it would be a no-brainer for the landowner or the developer to pick the town center zoning district because that's what the community has said they wanted in the land use planning process. But I also didn't want to take anything away from the existing opportunities that are there. So,
Can I ask one
does that
question?
answer your question?
Yes, it
Okay.
did.
Can I ask one question? Okay, so why is it limited to only 40 foot? Because of a previous, a previous decision? Is that the reason why it was set at 40 foot?
Yeah. So I will tell you from my standpoint, first of all, if you all think that number should be
I was just
35 or
curious.
60 or 50, that's within your purview and you all should talk about that and decide what you want it to be. So that none of this is set in stone. I'm just telling you the rationale and the thought process behind it. So the 40 foot was selected because that's what the maximum building height is in most of our zoning districts. And if you think about the town center, it's intentionally supposed to be a mix of commercial and residential. It's promoting more of the multifamily residential type concepts. So I selected 40 feet as the maximum height. But for example, if this group feels that maybe we should allow a mixed use building to go up to 40 feet, but you know what, we might want to allow a hotel to go up to 55 feet. We can write it that way. And you could say in the town center zoning district, hotels can be 55 feet or 43 feet, whatever number you want to pick. So there's flexibility there. But I picked 40 because most of the town center, the upper levels are going to be residential units. We limit it to 40.
Also, for a developer to come in, I think the 40 foot would probably be easier for them to, with their plans for us to approve as a builder, presenting, if they're going to build a building and apartments,
I think, yeah, I mean, generally,
I think
and
if you went down like to 35, then you're cutting, because everything runs in tens when you're building.
sure.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think, your job and the Board of Commissioners' job is to find the appropriate balance between those things. I mean, generally, in our community, people probably don't like tall buildings. Generally like something in the 40-foot range. And
And it
so
could
that's going
be
to have an
based on
easier
the
chance of being
fire
approved, I think. So
It could be based on the fire department, the 40-foot.
it could be, but we already allow 40 feet, so I don't
Right,
think there are any
so
fire
we're
department
within
concerns.
it.
And we allow 55 in the
Okay.
B20 zone, so I don't think the fire department, we can consult with them more if you all would like, but I think you should assume that those are acceptable standards for the fire department. They've been in place for many years.
So I did have a couple of questions. One of them is the, grammar. Right of ways should be rights of way.
We
Okay.
can make that change.
Cul-de-sac, not cul-de-sacs.
Okay.
Sorry, grammar.
You were English teacher in your
Yes,
past week.
yes, in a past life. And I was just curious, since we're revisiting this, why some existing uses are classified, and picnicking doesn't have a K. Sorry.
The grammatical errors are mine, so I'll take full
Just-
responsibility.
Now, it just seemed to me that some of these things, and I'm all the way at the back, section number 3, section 11.5, table of permitted and special uses.
Yep.
Is hereby amended. Add the following uses as special uses in the town center. Now, why would driving ranges not be just an allowed use? Why would family amusement and entertainment venues not be an allowed use?
Because it's already there.
Exactly. Go-kart tracks, are they now non-conforming uses, subject to a special use permit in the future? Why?
It's a great question. The reason it is written that way is because those uses are currently in the B20 zone, and the B20 zone lists them as special uses. So I took all of the permitted uses in those 3 zones and listed them as permitted uses. I took all of the special uses in those 3 zones and listed them as special uses. So those are currently, that's what it is currently.
That's the answer.
If this board would like to reconsider that at some point, we can talk about that.
So I'd like for the board to just consider that and talk about it. I'm not going to vote on it.
We went through this issue, the town for the pet center there.
I don't understand why,
Doesn't it
if
just
there are,
mean that you have to apply though for it? If it's a special use?
But why should you? I
if
mean,
it's already there, why would you now say that you couldn't build a Mac Daddy's 2? I'm just using an example here.
But would we
Oh.
want to?
No, I'm just using an
Wouldn't
example.
that be a good reason though to have there be an
It depends.
application process? Because you might not want,
It depends on if you want one.
yeah.
but I'm just curious
So-
I
why.
guess I'm just wondering why not have the ability, or why not have the,
But why would it be a special use if it's already
Yeah, so
used?
one
Well,
thing,
you could have someone else come in and buy the front part of the
Yes.
land and make another development,
Yes.
and you're gonna need this regulation.
Well, why? I mean,
go-karts are a
well, the-
special use, though.
Well, the ownership of the existing doesn't want it. I mean, I'm just curious why it was, this is a former board. This is a former planning board, all this, but it's being promulgated again.
so let me just, for the new members, let me just briefly explain the difference between a permitted use and a special use. So the simple explanation is if it's a permitted use, you have to meet whatever requirements we've outlined in the ordinance, like the things I talked about tonight as far as the setbacks and the 25% vegetated area, all those kind of things. If you can devise a plan that meets the requirements that are specified in advance by the town, we're essentially obligated to approve the plan because you've done everything the town has asked you to do. That's a permitted use. It's a relatively straightforward process. A special use process has more discretion involved for ultimately the Board of Commissioners to make judgments about whether or not, well, we think it might work if you do this, or it might work if you do that, or it might not work if you do this. And so special use permit processes are more subjective.
Yep.
Permitted use processes are very objective and pretty straightforward. So I personally prefer permitted uses just
Yeah.
because I want to be clear with people what the town's
Everybody.
expectations are.
And
But
not
that
political.
takes, but that takes more work on the front end by the community. The community's got to figure out what does it want, right? Like you don't want to just let people do anything if your community doesn't want it. You got to figure it out on the front end, which is what we're trying to do with the town center zoning district is lay out the rules, make sure they're clear and easy to understand so that people have some certainty, whether they're the developer or whether they're the neighbor, right? The neighbor knows, okay, this is probably what I can expect. I don't got to worry about this or that or whatever the case may be. So it kind of, there's benefits, I think, for both groups, to be honest with you. But
Well, I can say, having been involved in it, there was not a lot of public input on making this a special use. It was political.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
just my opinion.
My whole thing is if it's already permitted and been permitted, then why would it now be a special use? Because it's already previously been permitted. That's just my question.
if you look at the town, I don't know the history, obviously, and maybe some of you do, but I think if you look at the town's list of special uses, they tend to be things that might have maybe more noise or light or activity impacts, outdoor type things. And you may say that's great, or you may disagree with that. Either way is fine, but I think that's the rationale for it.
One last question. As far as road trees, again, I'm not going to vote on this, but I think it's, okay, a site-specific landscaping. I'm back on,
Where are you?
I'm sorry, I'm back on the ordinance. 1 to page 3 of our new ordinance. A site-specific landscaping plan is required, and that plan is also required to incorporate landscaping and new street trees in the adjacent public or private street right-of-way. I'm certainly willing to follow any example set by the town. How many street trees do we have that the town has planted or is responsible for in Cape Carteret in the last 50 years?
There's only one that I know is in the middle of the street.
Well, Daddy left that one. That was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because all the magnolia trees was a donation for Cape Point, right? On both sides of the road.
You mean crepe myrtles?
I mean, the crepe myrtles, yeah.
So that's just all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that's a reasonable concern. I think the reason you might include that in this ordinance is because you want to see more trees planted. And certainly, in my role, I want to see more trees planted. I think it's great when the town plants trees. I don't know what the history is or why people haven't done it, but.
Well, when the budget sessions come up, I'll be there to suggest that.
Okay, good.
I know that y'all,
Yeah.
with the storage unit there in Bay Shore, he was supposed to put plants, and he's never done that.
Yeah, he's got a row of plantings kind of along the back side of it there that sort of maybe didn't take off as much as people would like.
Yeah.
That whole thing is just a disaster.
He made a pretty picture of it, and it's not that pretty now.
One thing I want to illustrate for you because I want you to understand it. If you're comfortable with it, great. If you're not comfortable with it, then tell me and we'll adjust, right? So you'll notice that language and the actual language in the ordinance is in pretty much as Paxton just explained, but it is codified in the ordinance as letter M. It's section 11.10.1, and it is letter M under that in the ordinance. And so it says site-specific landscaping plans shall include the incorporation of new trees in the public right-of-way to achieve an attractive streetscape consisting of streets, sidewalks, and vegetation. So if you read that, it doesn't say how many trees, doesn't say what kind of trees, doesn't say how tall the trees have to be, doesn't tell you where the tree should be specifically put in the right-of-way. And I will tell you that that's intentional. And honestly, that's my general approach to local government is I don't want to be overly prescriptive. There are some communities and there are some ordinances in our book that are very, very detailed and very, very prescriptive, and sometimes confusing. But my approach in my career has been, and I'm continuing it with this recommendation to y'all tonight, is to not get that detailed, right? To say that you need to have a plan, you need to plant trees in the right of way. Is there a risk with that? Yeah,
Yes.
there's probably a risk that some people won't do as much as other people, or you may not like what they do. And I understand that. The flip side is if you make it too prescriptive and too detailed and confusing, it makes life very difficult. It causes conflict. It causes consternation. It causes bad relationships. So my approach has been and will be to work cooperatively with the developer when they come to our offices and they show up with their plans to pull out this ordinance, say, hey, we need to see your landscaping plan. We need to see the street trees in the right of way. Hopefully have a good cooperative dialogue with them and wind up with a nice community there. You may be listening to me right now and you may be saying, right on, that's great, Frank, we love that. Or you may be listening to me right now and saying, gosh, he's crazy. I don't think we should do that. Either way is fine. I just want you to understand what my philosophy is and what's represented in this ordinance. If you like it, keep it. If you don't, tell me that and we'll adjust it. So.
I say something, normally rule of thumb in a development like this, a developer will come in and clear cut it. Take all the trees. And then that's why they have the tree plan landscaping. A perfect example, go to Bow Coast in Beaufort. The Preston group didn't leave nothing standing. So they had a plan of all live oaks lining the street between the sidewalks and the curbs to put back what they had taken out, but put it back in a uniform way.
Yeah, and I personally, I think the Preston Development Group is a quality developer.
Oh, without a doubt. But it's cheaper for them to clear cut and develop and then put back what they taken out.
Yeah, and honestly, in a perfect world, I hope they'll go through some effort to try to save the nice trees.
Yeah, like
bigger
the
trees,
live
right?
oaks over
Yeah.
at Bow Coast, they fenced off, they don't grow overnight. But they spend a lot of money putting in live oaks down the street. And I mean, that's a first class neighborhood, the way it was developed.
So here's something I just want you all to understand. In the town's ordinances currently, forget the town center. Just go with the book right here. There's nothing in there that says you can't clear cut anything that you want. Like I can go out there today and buy a big parcel out there and clear cut the whole thing. I'm not going to do that. I hope somebody doesn't do that. But we also don't have anything that necessarily says you have to have a landscaping plan and a tree planting plan. So I think this is an improvement over what we currently have. Now, some people may think it doesn't go far enough, but it's all relative, right?
I think you should
Depends on
put
what you're
back what you take.
Sure.
I mean, that's just good planning.
Well, this is to establish our town center zoning. So as we grow and it gets there, then we can confront changes or approval of if someone brings a plan and go before the commissioning board for it. So the establishment of the town center zoning, I think it's a good program. I think so.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly amend this ordinance really anytime you like.
Exactly.
Just like any other ordinance.
Yes.
What you're not going to be able to do is if it's a permitted use and the developer comes in and they've checked all the boxes and met every requirement we have here, you're not going to be able to tell them no.
Right.
Now, you're certainly going to be able to have a dialogue with them and cooperate and try to encourage certain things. And most of the time, folks will try to do what you want them to do, but they're not required to. As long as they meet the requirements in here, which is why we need to be thoughtful and design this the way that we want to design it. I've given it my best effort. Hopefully it's good. If it's not, we need to tweak it in whatever way you all think we should tweak it.
I mean, I think it's well overdue. We're doing multi-use down in Cedar Point, Swansboro for the Asian, damn name of that, the restaurant on the right.
Bamboo.
Bamboo.
Yeah.
I can't. And we in development right now and planning for multi-use apartments, exactly what we're talking about here. And we're doing the drawings and everything, and it's gonna be probably one of the nicest places in Swansboro.
We need to bring we got a lot of young families and we gotta have it. They can't come in here and buy a big house. They need to
No, it's,
have a starter home. And this is what this is for.
it's way overdue.
For
I mean,
our youth,
Cedar Point,
young adults to get started.
Swansboro's
and
already
stay.
got it in gear. I mean, they're growing by leaps and bounds there. Bamboo, I couldn't even tell you the money they're gonna spend there. Because we've been it's been a year doing the plans and all. And it's gonna be exactly what you just showed us on the screen.
Yeah, if the vision comes true, it's going to be beautiful. It'll be a great place for
I'd love to
Carteret,
see
so.
it. Hope I'm still alive to see it.
We got a
Oh,
lot
me
of,
too.
we got a
Right,
young.
I have another question.
We're aging out.
About
mean,
the
it's-
5-foot setback, something that Minnie said earlier. I had the same thought that she was expressing about the size of that.
Mhm.
What if like, what if we wanted like picnic tables or an outdoor patio where people could sit in front of the restaurant or coffee house, or like 5 feet, there wouldn't be enough space for like outdoor life with that. You'd have to.
I was asking
Yeah.
Ted, he's a builder.
Well, it's a great question. Let me take a shot at answering it first. So keep in mind that the 5-foot setback, and it could be a maximum of 10, it depends on really what the developer wants to do. The 5-foot setback is from the right-of-way line. It's not from the street. So you're gonna have a 60-foot street right-of-way in there, and you're gonna have your street and your curb and gutter probably taken up about 28 feet, if I recall correctly. And so then you're gonna have probably another 15 feet of space there where you've got some street trees or a sidewalk and hopefully some plazas and some sitting areas. So it was written specifically to encourage exactly what you're saying. I think that's what we want, right? And so we want to allow the coffee shop or the restaurant or even the homeowner to have a bench out on the right of way there. So that's the intent behind it. I think we've done that. If you think we need something different, we obviously can talk about that. But that this is trying to do exactly what you said.
So I still have the question, even though it was written as it is now in place, passed by the board in October 2020. My question is still, why have all these special uses and not, as Frank says, he personally prefers permitted uses? That's my last question.
Which
and
ones were you thinking?
All of them.
Everything on this list?
Everything on the list that's a special use.
Well, the special use is a small group of,
Because they already exist.
but let me ask you this. Let me bring this to you. Let's say that somebody comes in here and buys a big tract of land and they decide to put another family amusement park in.
Great.
And then we'd have to have them to have a special use for that, to do that.
I object to making things political
Yeah.
instead of black and white where somebody can.
If they abide by the rules, then that's the rules.
Right.
If they want to build 3,
Why-
if the landowners want to sell it and it already exists, then why can't it exist?
Then you have that light pollution, special use. You got these people here, over here, you got a parking lot with all these aerial lights in it. It's polluting on their property. That's where you get into the special use and all that. I think the same thing like the Carteret Speedway, and they had their ups and downs with the special use down there for the noise and.
But they've been around
Oh,
since most people have ever even lived here.
I don't think they're a special use.
No.
You know,
No, sir. No, sir.
Let me ask you a question though. When we had the vet office go in behind the shopping center, they had to have special use because of the dog caging and the care and everything. So that had to have a special use. Is that correct? No.
I don't know the history on the pet center there, but that seems logical.
I mean, yeah, I think, and that's probably why you've got that in there because there was such a,
No, the vet office and their associated ancillary uses, that is a permitted use. That's a permitted
I
use.
think it's the
Is
dog.
that how we did that? How
Yeah.
they did that?
And so again, the only reason I listed those as special uses is because that's what our current ordinance says in
Understand
those
that.
zoning
Well,
districts.
I understand that.
Why would we want to separate one group and that permit retirement homes, sales, retail, public buildings and all that without special use? Personally, I think storage units should have a special use.
We don't allow storage units.
Huh?
We don't allow storage units.
Yeah, I know, but it's got.
Where do you see storage units?
I was looking at all the other issues that they
She's
got.
going in storage units.
It's
You know,
not
they're talking
allowed.
about assisted living facilities. It's not, it's just permittable.
That's not a storage unit.
So why don't we just blend it all as one?
That's my question.
Um, I don't know what the rationale was of the previous planning board and board of commissioners who adopted this ordinance.
I mean, grocery shops, that office, I mean,
Those are
they all
permitted
should,
uses.
they all should be one thing.
Here.
I would say this. So
If they meet the guidelines.
I'm a town manager,
Okay.
right? And have been for many, many years. And people think that my job is about building parks or building streets or building town buildings or fixing stormwater or writing ordinances, so forth, and dealing with budgets and numbers and tax rates, and it's all that stuff. But really, what my job is to help the elected officials build a community of people who enjoy their lives and who have meaningful relationships with their neighbors. Like simple, like that is my mission as a town manager. And I can figure out the numbers and I can figure out the street and I can figure out the stormwater. But ultimately, that's what my job is. And that's ultimately what the mayor and the commissioner's job is. We all want to enjoy our lives and we want to have good relationships with the people in our community. If there's a person in this room who doesn't want that, I know you're lying. So I tell you that only because I've been doing this for 30 years. And in my opinion, the special use permit process can be helpful. There are a lot of communities that like that, but it really just foments conflict
Yes,
and poor relationships.
and politics.
And it sets people up to not enjoy their lives and to not develop meaningful relationships with others. So I'll get off my soapbox right now, but I just wanted to share that with you because I was recently asked, what's the biggest thing you learned in your career after all this time? It's been wonderful, really, really rewarding, enjoyable. That's what I've learned, right? Like we all just gotta enjoy our lives and get along. And so to me, the permitted use process, it's clear, it's objective. That's why I prefer it. So I'll shut up.
Well, that's the reason I
Thanks
asked
for
about,
listening.
like you said, if it's already been permitted once, then why wouldn't it be permitted again?
That's my question.
So most of the things on here seem like fine, permitted use. And even really everything, I guess I would just ask, like, if some of the things like that you can end up with a wide variation of what they end up looking like in your town, alcoholic beverage store or a motel or some kind of places like that, in the actual permitted use section for specific types of buildings or structures, uses rather, can we be very specific on how we want certain types of places to look rather than, like, maybe not everything, right? Because it's not every day that you're going to see like a really awful looking bakery, but like you do kind of see really awful looking alcoholic beverage stores and motels on a daily basis. So
But what's pretty to you doesn't mean that's pretty to me
right,
either.
but I'm just meaning like if we want the town center to have a certain look, like those pictures that you showed, you can really quickly deviate from that if you don't actually have it
Sure.
listed in there what you want them to look like.
Yeah.
So, and I know you want to keep it vague,
No,
but
don't misunderstand me. So we can do exactly what you said. Like, for example, you may say, you know what, we'll allow a go-kart track as a permitted use if the parcel size is 10 acres. And I'm just making that up. I have no idea what Mac Daddy's golf cart or what the whole complex is. So you can write those standards very specifically to get what you want and to not get what you don't want. And it's still an objective permitted use process. That's what I was talking about earlier, where you've got to be thoughtful at the front end as to what you want to see in the community and how it might work. So yeah, like for example, if you all said, yeah, we think it's great to allow pet care and pet daycare and boarding facilities as a permitted use in Cape Carteret in the future, you'd want to think about how you want that to look and set up those standards for that. There's some things, I would argue retail is retail, right? Like, it doesn't matter to me whether you're selling liquor in an ABC store or you're selling stuff at the Quick Mart, right? I mean, so.
But if you put up a bunch of neon signs that say vape and that kind of thing,
you can
it would
absolutely
really
control
take
those
away
things.
from what Cape Carteret could be. And then it would turn into the town center that no one really wants to go to, or they
There's
just go there to
ordinances
get their
against those
vape
kind of
and.
things already.
You're not
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
see that. You're not
Yeah.
gonna see that. You might see that in different areas. But now specifically alcoholic beverage store refers to the state
Mhm.
store, not a bar.
Well, the point I'm getting at though is like, I think my personal opinion here, the permitted use would be fine as long as we achieve the standards that reflect those pictures that were adopted in the plan as what it kind of should look like.
The permitted use is just the start, let's say. There would also be a sign ordinance, which kind of addresses more the visual. What does that storefront look like? You know, and I think that that's definitely different than just the permitted use.
Yeah, and those are my biggest concerns from my perspective as, you know, I have a young family, and me and my husband, like, we enjoy traveling to Main Street areas with like this kind of concept. But then there's also some that we don't like traveling to because it's a bunch of closed down businesses and what's left there is not enjoyable. So you just don't want to, I think that it is a very real scenario that it doesn't look the way that you hope it will in the end, and it doesn't bring in or draw the people that you want. So there is a kind of a fine line, I think, between making it look really nice and enjoyable, and if we don't put those provisions in place for what this should look like in the front end, it might not end up the way we are imagining in those pictures.
Yeah. So I think that's a good point too. So like, think about it this way. In that, when you look at those town center pictures, and certainly no offense to any recreation, family amusement, entertainment venues at all, but you don't see that in that vision, right? Now, from the town standpoint, certainly no one wants to harm the existing family amusement and entertainment center. But this planning board and the board of commissioners may say, you know what, well, we really don't want to allow any new family amusement and entertainment centers. They're great, but this is just not the right location for it, right? You can do that in the other B20 zones in the town. That's a perfectly reasonable value judgment for you all to make and for the board of commissioners to make, and to keep it as a special use, or maybe even make it not a special use at all, right? Now that has some ramifications on the existing one out there. And again, we don't want to hurt the existing ones. But I think those are the value judgments that you all are participating in and ultimately the elected officials make.
Does this make existing family amusement and entertainment venues non-conforming uses?
Does not. And they're not currently. They're subject to special use permit requirements. I don't know the history on Mac Daddy's and how that came to be. I think it was a permitted use when it was done, right? So that gets into some legal issues, but this does not change anything with regard to that.
I'd like to take a vote on section 11.5, table, you just move it as one under two, instead of making it a separate unity.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to be recused from that vote if it pleases the board.
You see what I'm talking about here? See this little section here,
section.
She just wants to put everything in the special uses to
Yeah,
permitted
well, that's
use.
what I think should happen.
Just leave it like it is.
Yes, I agree with that, because if it's already there, then why are we special using it now?
Why separate this when you got all these ordinances here?
When you already have ordinance that cover it.
Permits. So I'd like to make a motion to move, section 11.5 to just continue from 11.5 number 2.
Just make them a use permit instead of a special use permit.
Yes, sir. Well, number 2 as a whole says special permits at the top anyway. So we already got it covered.
Yeah.
Special use for all of this. So why separate it? So I'd like to blend it under 2:11.5.
So these are being added as permitted uses,
We'll see
and
here.
these are being added as special uses.
We'll see it's already, the cedar table, special uses is in number 2. So why separate it?
Because these are being added as permitted uses.
But if they're already a permitted use or a special use, that's not relevant to
Yeah.
the.
So there's a key point, and you all need to understand this, right? The way this is structured. So I told you we took all of the existing permitted uses in the 3 zones, the blue, the red, and the yellow, and we made them permitted uses in the town center. I told you we took all the special uses in the blue, the yellow, and the red, made them special uses in the town center. So for example, if a driving range is a permitted use in the town center zoning district, somebody could come in and they could put a driving range right there. Property that's currently developed residential.
Zone
Be-
residential.
I'm sorry, yeah, zoned residential, I apologize. They could put it right there next to White Oak Elementary School. They can currently do that anywhere there's red with a special use permit, right? So it gets into those trickier issues that I just think you all want to be at least thoughtful about, right? Like, it's easy to say, and I'm the biggest proponent there is of permitted uses. It's easy to say, make it a permitted use, but I want you to understand the ramifications of this, because the way this is written with the town center zoning district, you could then go in and build a Lowe's home improvement right there, for example, because that's a permitted use, right? And there's a whole
So
list
the
of
red
those,
zone
so.
would be B20s, except we limit our square footage of buildings, of commercial buildings. Nothing over 50,000 can be built.
There's certainly all the other development
So-
regulations in
Oh,
there,
yeah.
but, and again, I just want you to understand how this works so that you know what you're doing. So
But, okay, but if there's already special use permits on the books, okay, by changing this, it's still not changing. Well, I guess it would be changing, never mind.
yeah,
Never mind.
you're,
Sometimes I'm a little slow to take.
But I
This-
mean,
this would-
let's look at the economics of this. Nobody's going to build another driving range.
I personally don't think so. I
Yeah.
agree. I mean, I don't think
Or
that they
another
will,
Lowe's.
so.
You know, I just,
You never know what people got in their head.
well, consider the ownership for Pete's sake. I'm not voting on this, but I certainly have an opinion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what the recommendation I think I would make to you all is
Okay.
maybe consider whether or not they should, those 5 or 6 uses that are listed there, whether they should be permitted or special uses, maybe as a separate exercise. And when you do that, think about it not only for town center, but think about it
For
for
all of
B20
them,
and the other zoning districts
Yes.
also. I mean, it is a reasonable concern and a reasonable question. It's just, my fear is you might be muddying the waters a little bit on this. But ultimately, that's your judgment to make. So.
All right, you want
Say let's
vote on the,
talk about it later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we table it?
take a
till
vote
next-
on this to leave as is?
Yeah, what's the board's pleasure? Do you want to recommend this to the Board of Commissioners for adoption at a future meeting? Or do you want to spend a little more time thinking about it and talk about it again at your next meeting on March 11th? Or Is it, no, March
say-
19th, I think it is.
I'd like to,
Table it to the next meeting.
That's fine, yeah.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, this is a big deal.
This, yeah.
And I
it
want you to
can't
be
made
comfortable.
in one night.
I agree with that.
We will do that then. We'll schedule it for
commissioners
you.
are-
Yeah, it gives time to think about it and
Because there's questions that I have that I just can't think of right now.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, please take your time. Certainly on anything you're doing, but especially something like this.
it's not a one-night decision. But I like it.
so we're gonna make a motion, someone make a motion, we're gonna continue this to the next meeting.
Yes.
I have a second.
So
I thought Jeremy said.
yeah.
when
She
is,
done second.
our next meeting is the
March 19th.
Number 9.
I'm sure I'm not out of town that one.
If we do have a Zoom option for planning board members, it's really crazy how the law is. The board members, the governing body can't do it, but you all can. So if you want to, I don't know why that is.
Yeah, I'm in St. Louis the week before that.
Is there any comments from the staff, I mean, y'all? Any
What?
any comments?
I think it's been a good meeting.
Yeah, thank you all for your willingness
It's
to
been one of
serve.
the
And
best since I've been here, to be honest with you. We're not talking about mailboxes.
Yeah.
at any point that I or Julie can be helpful, obviously you know where we're at. Please just call or email, or if you want to spend some more time talking about something, we can set up a meeting. I'm happy to help
Okay.
you guys in any way that we can. One of the things, number 8 on the agenda, so the next Board of Commissioners meeting is on Monday, March 11th.
11?
At least since I've been here, I don't know how long this goes back, the planning board has sent a member of the planning board, sometimes the chairperson, the most recent chair rotated it around with people, sent one of the members to the Board of Commissioners meeting just to give a brief 5-minute update to the Board of Commissioners to let them know what you all are working on. If you all would like to continue that practice, you can do that and the chair can do it, or you can rotate, or if you'd like to delegate that to the town manager, I'm happy to do that for you. It really depends on whatever your preference is.
I've got a meeting that usually on, but I'll miss one every once in a while if I need to, but
I'd like to see everybody participate in giving the minutes to the board.
Okay.
The commissioning board, not just myself, because
but we
My
also got the
interpretations
assistant.
may be different from the meetings, and I think everybody, you've had very good conversations tonight. And Ted, I think everybody should take a rotation to deliver what we speak of and what kind of decisions were done and like to present to the commissioning board. And you too, Frank, I mean, be a family thing.
Yeah, that's great. Do you want to maybe handle, as the chairperson, do you want to handle the first meeting on March 11th, or is there another person here who would like to do
Anybody
that
else
one?
like to
So-
say anything, March? Speak up forever hold your peace.
My time's limited.
Well, then, if it's all right with you, Minnie, we'll plan on you just briefing
Okay.
the board for a few minutes at the March 11th meeting.
Okay.
You do it first, maybe I do it
We
second.
can take turns. We can.
Every once in a while I can jump in.
I
if
ain't
I
been
need
home,
to,
but
Yeah, I'm in St. Louis that week for work.
Are you?
I thought you said
Okay,
St.
well,
Lucia.
put it on you the next time, okay?
She probably wishes.
You did great tonight. We all did great tonight. Thank you very
it's been a
much.
very good meeting.
Thanks for
Thank you all.
making, I hope, if you
Yeah.
decide to take me away at the chair, let me know.
I know we've been bad about our hair lately.
Thank
Do
you
we
very
need to
much.
adjourn?
And meeting adjourned? Motion to adjourn, second?
So move.
All in favor? 7:53, we're
Now we're
adjourned.
gonna need dinner and get a shower and go.
Thank you all.
I appreciate it. It was
Thank
good.
you all for being here. Do y'all have any comments?